Great. So, in light of recent events, we thought it'd be a good idea to talk about this situation, how airlines can avoid PR disasters, and we love to play with Twilio. So how do we solve that with Twilio Sync? A little bit about us. We're Impeccable. We're a San Jose, Bay Area-based design and development firm focused on enterprise web and mobile apps. We've recently been named 2 years in a row one of the top app developers in the Bay Area. Here are some of our clients. And let's get on. For those of you from out of town, maybe living under a rock like me, a little bit of background info. April 9th, United Flight 3111 had a situation where they needed to have 4 United folks on the plane, but the plane was already full. So they started asking for volunteers. They didn't get any volunteers to take the next flight. So they started randomly picking passengers and going up to them. These people have already boarded and asking them to leave. And those that did not comply, such as this gentleman, Dr. David Dow, the situation got a little ugly and he ended up being forcibly removed. They tried to pull him out, and they pulled him out a little too forcefully, knocking him out, and then they dragged him out. Well, the internet's response was incredible, not to say the least. Here are some of the highlights that I thought was kind of like cruel, funny, whatever. So we'll kind of blow through that. This one was pretty funny, and Liam Neeson. And the market also reacted, the stock market. United shareholders dropped it like it's hot, costing the company $1.4 billion of net worth market cap overnight. It would have been cheaper to pay Dr. Dow $1 million for him to take the next flight. Well, how could this have been handled better? And how could this have been handled using technology such as Twilio? So with that, we'll show you, give you a full demonstration. So on one screen here, on the left, you have the airline dashboard. And on the right, you have the passenger's phone app. So the airline realizes, hey, we're overbooked. So what happens is, and they need one passenger to vacate, what they can do is send out, using Twilio Sync, we built this on top of Twilio Sync, send out a notification. So everybody sitting at the gate all of a sudden gets a push notification asking if they'd volunteer, be willing to take a next flight or go at a later time for an amount. So it's a blind bid process. So folks can start entering an amount. So I'll do, let's say $200 because I'm stupid, I didn't realize. And the airlines can see, so these are folks from my team here entering the bidding process real time. And we can select this guy here because he doesn't know what the cheapest bid is. And we'll send a voucher to him. And boom, you can see both a text message and a push notification within the app, if you weren't in the app, that your bid's been selected. So hey, here's a voucher. See you on the next flight. That was a pretty simple. And we could have, we didn't have time to do this, but we could have done this just purely through SMS. Well, I think showing it within the context of an app was nicer, but we could have done this purely via SMS, where you just, if the folks who didn't using Twilio task router, you can just route it to folks who don't, and decide, or Twilio Notify, using Twilio Notify, decide who doesn't have an app, who has an app, send them a push notification, an SMS notification for those who don't have apps, and push notifications for those who have an app, and just taking care of this all through SMS as well. And that would result in happy customers all boarded, and the folks who didn't board were just as happy. And with that, I'll let Miki take over and talk a little bit about the implementation.
All right, can you guys hear me? All right, so my name is Miki. I'm a software engineer at Impeccable. and we're going to talk about the new best friends on the block, which is Twilio Sync and REDUX. Now, quickly, by a show of hands, who's familiar with REDUX or React, that library? Okay, few people. Very nice. So for those who aren't, here's a very general overview of REDUX. You have components, and a component can be something from an H1 tag to a very complicated video with multiple buttons. And when your component renders, there's an action that you could put on your component, whether it's a click of a button or just your component loading. And it calls an action creator. And then those actions flow through these things called reducers. And reducers calculate the state. And the keyword there is state. And then the state flows into the components again, and then they re-render. So if you pass, maybe there's the color blue, and then you pass the color red to the state, the reducer will recalculate the state, and the component will become red. So with Twilio Sync, we integrated Twilio Sync, but what is Twilio Sync? Well, the definition online is it's a synchronized web and mobile apps with a single source of state in the cloud. So remember, Redux deals with state, and Twilio Sync also deals with state. So they work quite well together. It's also cross-platform from iOS to Android to web, and also it has local sync. So if you're doing something and you lose connection and you get back, it resumes from where it left off. So now, since we have these two new best friends, how does Twilio Sync fit in? Well, when you call an action creator, you fetch the data from Sync, and then the next flow continues. But you might be thinking, I hate waiting. I don't want to wait for my data to come in. It might take too long. So we thought that too. And after we developed this, we found out something very interesting. So here's a video, and it's going to show when you place a bid, the data actually comes in faster than the native iOS to push to the next screen. So we were able to retrieve the data from the database faster than the native iOS pushing to the next screen. So you can take a look at this. As they place a bid, we got the bid faster, and then it pushed. So it came in really fast. So you don't have to wait much longer. It's just very quickly, and then you have the data. So how did we build this? Well, among other things, initially we knew that we were going to need a data where we had all the passengers and also a way to select a bidder. So initially, when we don't have any data, we showed the loading screen. And to use Twilio Sync, you need 4 key items. You need your Twilio Sync service ID, your Twilio account SID, your API key, and your API secret. And all of that could be found in the console. So here we use a simple express router to create our token. And when that token is created, we could fetch that token from the client side. And with that data, we can create this thing called Sync Client, and that basically gives us control of the database. Now, you have these things called Sync Objects, and they are either documents, lists, or maps. So we have to decide which one we're going to use. They work very similar, but in different ways. So you kind of have to decide which one is the best to use. So we went ahead and went with the map. As you can see, when it first loads, we fetch the items, and then in our payload, we put the data in the payload for Redux to take off. Another part was when a bid comes in. When a bid comes in, we again update the map. We update the flight data, and by that time, we know that the flight is overbooked, so we set full to true, and then we dispatch another action. And right after we dispatch that action, right when the flight is overbooked, we start listening for incoming bids. And Twilio Sync has a very convenient method for that on item updated. So right away we started listening, and we connected the payload, which connected it to the same place in Redux. So we can see here we have data, which initially we have no data. We have no bidders. We have no passengers. But once we fetch the data, we can see we overwrite that with the data. And then once there's a bid that comes in, again, on item update on the bottom, we overwrite the data again. So it's all going to the same place, all very fast. So with that, now we can further this code. Before we had no data, so we showed the loading screen, but now that we have data, we could check if they placed a bid. And the bid price will come in, will map over the data, all the users that are placing the bid. And then once we see that there's a bid price, we create this thing called a bid card, which you saw. And you have the option that you can see the image URL, the phone number, and you can also put a method on it called winning bid, which you select the winning user, and that will send out the SMS and also show that you won in the app. So then you can see that Twilio Sync and Redux are really best friends, and they will live happily ever after.
Yeah, and the idea here is by using real-time sync services, you're reducing time to market in building these types of tools, so you can better handle these situations, and quite cheaply. There's not a lot of cost because they're very simple to use, and they're very quick to implement. All right. And yeah, that's not just, so we built this little demo in React Native. So we have both platforms, iOS and Android, covered in one code base. And then the sync code, because sync automatically works with web and mobile, that was pretty easy. So we didn't have to take care of a lot of that plumbing. Yeah, so the happily ever after is not just the sync and Redux, but also the customers and the airlines. All right. That's it.